Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson, good morning.
Good morning, Rod. How are you going today?
Very good. Let's start with the big story coming out of Dubbo. You're to appear as one of the contestants on Dancing with the Stars.
I am concerned that you think it's one of the big stories. There's a extreme lack of talent in my dancing ability. Happy to support cancer research, happy to support the cause. And I did do it in Dubbo once before, and I think it was about 10 years ago, and it was proven to everyone then that I had a severe lack of talent, but at that stage it was a ballroom dancing competition, and competition's probably a bit loose too, fundraiser obviously, and the person they assigned me to, a young female, was very talented and danced around while I had to stand around and do not too much, so that was good. But it's changed a bit this year. I've had my first rehearsal at a local dance studio, and I'm just hopeful the kids who are very good in their rehearsals, the kids will be the stars on the stage and I can just stand around and watch them a little bit. But it's on the 12th of April. It'll be at the Dubbo Regional Theatre and Convention Centre. A range of Dubbo locals are involved, and again, it's all about cancer research.
Well, all the best with that competition come fundraiser. Hope it goes very nicely for you.
Thank you.
Now, at the weekend, you got to Bathurst.
Yeah, I went down to Bathurst. That's why I'm talking a bit loud at the moment, because my ears are still ringing. Went down to the Bathurst 500. And this was an extra event that the Bathurst course secured when Newcastle pulled out. I'm not sure exactly what happened with Newcastle, but the event was no longer at Newcastle, and so they held this one at Bathurst. And there was a bit of tricky negotiations that had to go on there because they're limited to 5 race weekends or 5 race events throughout the year, and that's legislation that goes back many years. So they had to do a long event from the Bathurst 12-hour last weekend through to the Bathurst 500 on Sunday this week. So that was a bit of tricky negotiation, I'm sure, but it's still good for the region. Whenever you have a major event like that in the region, everyone benefits from that. So just the fact that, I was there talking to people, I met some people from Victoria and just talking to people about the whole regional area and just seeing people out there, and they probably had 25,000 spectators that were there at the event over the course of the event. So that's still more people coming out, seeing the regional areas, and successful race, successful event. I think overall, the more we can have like that, the better. Again, they are limited to those 5 though. So anyway, good to see Bathurst on the map again.
And is there an opportunity for Dubbo to pick up an event like that?
I don't think there really is. Newcastle was a street event, but I just don't see anywhere the streets of Dubbo would lend themselves to an event like that. And one of the things that I think is really important is we can all work together with complementary events. So some people say, do we want a Tamworth Country Music Festival? No, Tamworth's got that. They do a really good job of it, and that brings people to regional areas. Bathurst has got an iconic racetrack. That racetrack was built before I was born, and it's been a part of the racing landscape in Australia for so long, and legends like Peter Brock have been made there at the event. I don't think we want to try and have an event like that. Let them have it, but again, while they're there, piggyback on the back of that, see how we can work with them to bring people out to the region, not just to the race, but to the region. And of course, we've got our zoo, and people at Bathurst, while I was there on Sunday, people were speaking to me about the zoo and how many people that brings out to the region. So again, when they're out there for the zoo, is there an opportunity there for them to visit other regional locations? So I think working together with different types of events rather than all try and have the same event makes a lot more sense.
All right, another sporting event. This one was in Dubbo, touch footy.
Yeah, very, very good event there. As you may remember, last year we got the New South Wales Touch Junior State Cup as a one-off event because they'd had some issues with weather over at Port Macquarie, which did have the 3-year contract. So we helped them out with the 3rd year of that 3-year contract and held it in Dubbo last year. They had 187 teams last year, estimated over 7,000 spectators. This year, after the raging success of last year, we won the contract for the next 3 years. So that's a fantastic, basically nod to how well the event went last year. And on the back of that, more teams entered, more teams heard about how good it was. So there were 202 teams that entered, 9,000 spectators. Conservative estimate was $4 million through our economy on the weekend. And we just saw where people were booked in. I talk about that regional influence. People were booked in motels in Gilgandra, in Wellington, in Narromine. We even had people that I spoke with who were in parks. And one of the things that was interesting is you think, well, parks, that's an hour and 10 minutes away from Dubbo. That's a bit of a pain to get to the event. But they said the event was so well organised that when they turned up there, it didn't take them long to find a park and then walk across to the ground. where they found in other locations that's been held, just the whole parking process and getting to the ground could take them 30 or 40 minutes. So it might have been 5 or 10 minutes that they had to travel in the car, and then 40 minutes they had to travel to get to the ground. So it probably wasn't a lot of difference there if they had to travel for a bit more than an hour to get there. So it did help the whole region. And just the feedback from people, the same as last year, the feedback from people. I heard one person ask me about the artificial turf we had laid because the grounds look so good. And I went, no, it's real grass. It's absolutely real grass. Who did you get in to do the grass for you? No, our staff. They're very good at what they do. They did all this. People talking about just the trees around the grounds, a bit of shade for people to stand under or sit under while the games are being played. They commented about the lack of litter. Now, Dubbo Touch Association did a fantastic job in helping keep the area clean, but they looked around and said, there's no litter. I can't see any litter. This is fantastic. 9,000 people and not a piece of litter. So it was a really good event, and you just saw the activity down the main street and you could spot them because they were often in their touch footy uniforms. There'd be families walking along with one of the kids or more than one of the kids in touch footy uniform, and they were into supermarkets and they were doing a bit of shopping, and they were around the whole city. So it really was a great event.
A good thing for the Dubbo Regional Council to host. Well done, and another couple of years on the contract there. Hopefully more after that. Continuing with our sport, Barton Park.
Yeah, Barton Park was opened on the 29th of November 2014. I remember being there. Rob De Castella was there at the opening. It was a great event, a great launch of a fantastic facility. About $5.7 million was spent, a combination of federal, state and local government money on that particular facility. And when we toured around to a few different locations before we actually built Barton Park, we looked at some other international standard athletics tracks, and the message we got loud and clear from those places was make sure you put money in your budget to continue to keep the surface and the whole facility up to scratch. You want to keep your international accreditation, for example, but you also want to make sure that the users of it had a great experience. So we took that bit of advice on board, and we have been putting money away to make sure we can keep maintaining it. We were ready to get to the stage of doing a resurfacing of the track, but we did put in for a grant, and the last government gave us $1.06 million for the resurfacing, and the new government has honoured that contract, and so that was all fantastic. The surfacing, the tender we put out for that, the resurfacing will cost us about $1.23 million, so we'll pay a little bit out of that out of our pocket, but again, we've been budgeting to pay some money, so that was good, and we can use some of that budget money for elsewhere. It's a very well-used facility. We typically have 35 school athletics carnivals through that season. We've got state athletics, regional athletics. We've got little athletics, use it during the summer period. So trying to find a spot that we could do the resurfacing was a challenge. We're going to do it from the 11th of March. We'll close it down and we'll have it out of action for about 6 weeks while we do that resurfacing. So again, we want to keep the track at the standard that it should be at and make sure it keeps its international accreditation.
Speaking of resurfacing, it is important because most folks who head from the west go to Dubbo, and at some stage or another they're running along Wheelers Lane.
Yeah, so we've got some reconstruction work being done there. It'll be out of action for about a week, so that starts today, and if everything goes to plan and the weather holds out, which the weather might not have been perfect for farmers, there mightn't be enough rain around for farmers at the moment, but while there's a lack of rain around, it's great for us to actually get some of our roadworks done. I've had more and more people comment about how many things they're seeing repaired in the roads, and the Wheelers Lane reconstruction stage 2 is the next one. So northbound lanes from 41 Wheelers Lane through to Mile Street roundabout, basically they'll have temporary road closures along there over the next week. So if you are going to travel along there, just think about the route you're taking and see if you can go somewhere different. We'll have detours in place, of course, but if you can avoid that area, that'll be better, and obviously that allows you to travel as quickly as you can from one end to the other. And everyone wants perfect roads, Rod, but unfortunately it means that we have to take them offline from time to time, and that's an example of one we're doing right there. But people have talked about Wheelers Lane for a long time, wanting to fix up a lot of that. It's a major feeder road.
It is indeed. Now, Waste to Art.
Yeah, a couple of entries here, and I do love going along to Waste to Art. The entries are closing a little way away. 3rd of May, entries are closing there, but Waste to Art is a great example of people taking waste, turning it into something unbelievable, and I'm amazed when I go along and look at the entries each year. I'm constantly amazed at what people do. The theme this year, there's typically a theme each year, is the year of packaging. So I imagine people will take a lot of that packaging that comes with all those different goods that they buy and turn that into something unbelievable. 3rd of May, entries close, and then we'll have them on exhibition from the 25th of May to the 21st of July. There's obviously winners that are picked out of that as well, and then there's a regional competition. If you win this local one, then you go up to the next level in the competition. But I encourage people, anyone that's got a bit of creativity, to put an entry into that. I just love seeing the variety of entries in that competition.
And what's going on with Minakamo?
Well, entries are open there. I don't know if it's called entries. Applications is probably more accurate. Applications open for students and chaperones for the next visit to Minakamo. We have 10 student positions available. You've got to be aged between 15 and 18, and you've got to attend high school in the Dubbo local government area, so you can apply for those. And there's 2 chaperone positions, and the chaperones that I've talked to in years gone by have had a fantastic experience as well, and obviously we want good, responsible people to look after those 10 kids. There's obviously a lot of responsibility. Parents are handing over their children to Dubbo Regional Council and to the chaperones and say, come back in 2 weeks' time, all safe and sound, and so there's a lot of responsibility there. Applications for that program are open now, and they closed on the 15th of April this year.
And you're to welcome some students to the Dubbo regional area?
Well, there's some that'll be our local students already, and some that are travelling from afar, some travelling as far as overseas. CSU, Charles Street University, has got their O-Week start, or their welcome event today, so I have the privilege of going along and formally welcome them to CSU and Dubbo. Now, some are from Dubbo, so I'm not really welcoming them to Dubbo, but it's really important, our university presence here, and that's a great facility for people in Dubbo, people in the region. So for someone that was living in a Burke or a Walgett or a Cobar and thought that university might have been a bit too hard for them before Charles Street University opened, it was always a bit of a challenge. Maybe they were thinking about Sydney, that was always too hard. But once Charles Street University opened up in Dubbo, it gave people the option to go to university here, and I think that's really important. So I love going along and welcoming those students, talking to them about how good a facility we've got there in Charles Street University, and just really seeing what council can do for them. But it's always a pleasure to go along and welcome that new cohort. And one thing that I find with Charles Street University is, I remember in my university days, and everyone starting university was typically 17 or 18 years of age and maybe a few mature age students. Charles Street does seem to have a few more mature age students, where people maybe finished school and went off into the workforce and did things and then decide later on they want to get their degree. So I find typically at these welcome events I'll see students everywhere from 18 through to maybe mid-30s, and a fair mix in amongst all those ages there, as it caters to a whole range of different people.
We're speaking with the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson. Now, let's talk about Canberra stuff, federal politics, airline slots.
Well, this is an important one, and I've actually had the interesting challenge of meeting with I called him the slot master at Sydney Airport many years ago, trying to argue for some more slots for Dubbo, because we had other airlines that wanted to fly Dubbo to Sydney. And unfortunately, what I learned in that particular visit, a great amount of detail that I got out of that visit, but what I learned was that the Sydney Airport doesn't really own the slots per se. The airlines own the slots, and good luck getting one of those slots off one of the airlines. Once they've got them, they hold on to them. There is some discussion that maybe some of those airlines do hoard those slots, and sometimes maybe they'll book flights to take up a slot, and then they might cancel flights. And there was an unfortunate circumstance in inverted commas where they might say that something happened, but they were always planning on cancelling it because they don't want to lose those slots to another airline, to one of their competitors. So the Honourable Catherine King MP, who's the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, announced a reform on slots and the management of those slots, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I would love to see those slots allocated to regional cities and towns, and obviously to other areas as well, to other capital cities. But from a regional perspective, I'd love to see them allocated to those particular locations, and then let the airlines compete for those slots that are allocated to those locations. I just think it seems a bit backward, a bit like the tail wagging the dog, when you've got the airlines themselves that then can allocate those slots to different areas on a whim. They can take them away from one location, and then that location can lose their slots, lose their services, and those slots get taken to another location. I'm not sure the airlines will be happy about this reform, but I think it's well needed, and I think it needs to be something that gets in place before we get to the stage where we've got Western Sydney Airport. We want to make sure the slot management for both Sydney Airport and Western Sydney Airport is under control before we get those two airports, because we don't want to see regional airlines pushed out to Western Sydney Airport exclusively.
And you're heading to Canberra for a few meetings. Is this one of the things you'll bring up with Catherine King?
It is one of the things I'll bring up. I am actually meeting with Catherine King this week. There's a few other things to talk to Catherine about. It's always a busy conversation because she does touch so many things that are involving us. But certainly visits to Canberra are always interesting. You try and impart some knowledge onto the various ministers you meet with, but you're also trying to make sure you are aligned with their priorities as well. You've got a better chance of getting money for different things if you know what their priorities are. But we've got meetings lined up with Catherine King, Krista McBain, Anthony Chisholm, Carol Brown, and Chris Bowen, although I think it's only going to be Chris Bowen's office. I think Chris Bowen wasn't available to meet with us, but a range of different ministers there and assistant ministers there to meet with, just to make sure we keep things progressing out here in regional areas.
Best of luck with that. We'll talk with you in the very near future. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Rod. My pleasure.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.